This year we're honored to have not one but two guest speakers, and our second guest speaker is Stephen Walker. He has the unique distinction of being the first male in his family to complete college, and after receiving a degree from Southside Virginia Community College, he went on to pursue his love of history with a BA degree from Longwood University in Farmville, and he got his master's degree at VCU in Richmond, and in 2011 he was awarded the Jefferson Davis Medal by the United Daughters of the Confederacy. So Stephen, we're glad to have you here. Stephen Walker, welcome to the Confederate History and Heritage Day.
Let me just clarify, when Ms. Snead called me, she said, listen, we have one really good speaker and we need you to fill out the rest of the time. And I said, yes, ma'am, I can do that. So here I am, and I appreciate the opportunity to be with you. And thank you again for clarifying and correcting, because that's what we have to do as members of Southern Heritage and followers of people from, we have to clarify and correct all the time. I tell my students quite often, it's not about race, it's not about racism, it's about people. They were my ancestors and yours, and I can remember them and honor them in any way that I choose. And I think we should all be able to do that. So I'd like to share a few thoughts with you today about the Confederate soldier. I think if asked, any of you might have in your mind the individual or individuals you think would be the greatest soldier of them all. And I want to touch on a little bit of that as we go through this today. But the thing that surprises me most is why. Why? Why would they be willing to do what they did? Well, I think it's very simple. And it's a fascinating statement. It's the land. And I believe that to be true. It's home. And my home is Virginia. My home is Charlotte County. I live in Charlotte Courthouse, and it's my home. And I'll do whatever I need to do to defend my home. And that's what they did. It was their home. Abraham Lincoln acted without the authority of Congress, called for 75,000 volunteers to put down a rebellion in South Carolina, because those men were defending their home. And they had to march through Virginia to get there. Virginia was not going to stand for that. It's their land. It's their home. You see, the South fought this war as a war for independence. They had no intention of making it what by true definition is a civil war, overthrow one government and install your own government. They had no intention of doing that. They wanted to leave. They believed they had every right to leave. You see, we hold truth to the Declaration of Independence. And a lot of people espouse all men are created equal. But skip on down to the bottom of that, where it says these colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states. You see, that's what South Carolina was going on. We're tired of being part of this. We want to be an independent state now, and these other states will join us, and we're going to form a new nation. One that we believe is conceived in liberty. One that we believe upholds the true meaning of the Constitution. You see, that's what it was about. The Declaration says that whenever a form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it's the right of the people to alter or abolish it. And South Carolina and those other states believe that's just what they were doing, forming a new nation. And so I want to honor those men who thought to do that, because they were the ones who stood up for what they believed in. And now we have to stand up to tell people what's true and not let it be dictated by Washington or Richmond, for that matter, as to what you can believe and where you can fly a flag and what you can say out in public. It's heritage. It's not hate. It's not racism. It's home. And they protected it. And we honor it. And we should. You see, the citizen soldier for the Confederacy, I think, personifies the best qualities that we have here in America, and they were touched on earlier. The preservation of liberty and freedom, that was the greatest motivating factor for the South's decision to fight for independence. The tenacity with which the Confederate soldiers fought underscored their belief in the rights guaranteed by the Constitution. These attributes are the underpinning of a democratic society, and they represent the foundation on which this nation was originally built. No, they didn't seek to destroy the federal government. They sought to withdraw and form their own government, one that they believed would be truer to the Constitution as it was written. You see, Southern volunteers enlisted for what they believed to be patriotic reasons, to protect their homes, their state's borders, their state's laws, and abandon a federal government that was not representing their interests. Who is the greatest among these? Well, would you say it's P.G.T. Beauregard, the winner down at Fort Sumter? Would you say he's the greatest Confederate soldier? Or what about A.P. Hill and his timely arrival at Sharpsburg? Was he the greatest soldier? And where would we be without Lee and Jackson at Chancellorsville in Lee's finest hour? Are they the greatest soldiers? Well, just pick one. They're all great, but they all defended their home. But I want to maybe look at it from a different perspective. You see, we read a lot about Lee, and we read a lot about Jackson, and there's books about Longstreet, and Pickett, and there's all kind of books about those folks. See, but I believe the greatest of those soldiers was the young man who was in his early 20s. He was unshaven and unkempt. He was gaunt but tough. See, the rebel soldier's woolen hat and uniform was gray, ragged form, either having been worn too long or having been handed down from a dead soldier. And while the Confederate soldier's appearance was often shabby, it was his spirit that led him to the charge. It was he, the average soldier, that was the greatest soldier of all. Not any one general, but the men who executed what they asked him to do. Your ancestors and mine. They said, take that hill, defend that wall. And they stood shoulder to shoulder to do just that. Men who resigned their commission in the Union to join the Confederacy did so because they believed and were taught at home that duty, honor, and loyalty came before all other issues, and family and home is the most important. Many of the best trained and highly skilled officers sided with the Confederacy. The most famous probably was General Lee. He seemed nearly perfect in all aspects of his life. He had great morals. He was extremely religious, and his men showed him proper respect. In a conversation with General Longstreet, Lee knew Virginia held a large spot in his heart when he would remark, there was a higher duty to Virginia. That was his first duty. There's never any doubt about that. See, the idea that Lee was fighting for Virginia inspired Pickett's men to cross that field that day. It inspired men to stand behind that stone wall. It inspired Stonewall Jackson and his men to lead a 20-mile, a 13-mile roundabout trip at Chancellorsville. They did it because they believed and trusted in General Lee. General Lee asked them to do something, and the greatest soldiers responded and did what he asked them to do. They believed in a cause, and that makes them great. That makes them heroes. That makes them worthy to be remembered. And don't let anybody take that away from you. You see, it is our responsibility. Just as those Southern farm boys stood soldier to soldier that hot July afternoon, staring across that 1 mile wide open field at an enemy entrenched on a high ground, they were led by valiant officers as they marched into harm's way. Those men marched for their country, and it is right and honorable that we remember that they gave their last full measure. They did it for us. They did it for us. Lieutenant William H. Stewart would write this: the pure spirit, the deepest love, the greatest hero was in the infantry private of the South. He was reared when the irrepressible conflict quickened the pulse of the people. He was inspired by the intellectual gladiators of the South, and he gloried in the heroism of his ancestors, which had won the Republic from England. He shouldered the burden of his convictions. He grasped his musket for his cause. He inhaled the smoke of battle, and he felt the sting of the bullet. He bled from shot and shell. He dared to die when he could foresee his unearned ashes scattered on the soil of his enemy. Where is loftier heroism? Where is nobler patriotism? Where is truer manhood? Where is a more noble hero? For principles, the Southern soldier carried the heaviest cross. For principles, he courted an unknown grave. He touched elbows in an unwavering line of charge. He gained victory at the point of bayonet. He dauntlessly rushed over earthworks, and he stood like a stone wall on the field. He was strongest in battle and gentlest in victory. We should never allow the memories of our Confederate soldier to vanish. The Confederate soldier stood for freedom from oppressive government, and they believed in self-determination and local control for their lives. The 19th century Southerner has carried the burden of ridicule pretty much since 1865, and that ridicule and hatred even exist today. There are efforts all over this country to abolish anything Confederate. A war of misinformation rages as falsehoods on the history of the South are presented in schools, in culture, and even in works that claim to be historic in nature. Our ancestors deserve to be held in the memory and honor of the sacrifices they made. We should not judge them for their actions or thoughts of social, political, or economic, or even scientific knowledge based on today's knowledge, but rather we should look back to them in the proper context that they deserve. Didn't they really want little more than to be free and to decide their own way of life for their own country and their own state? We should hold them up as an example, to be willing to stand up for what they believed in. Oh, it's easy to be armchair quarterback Civil War historians. It's easy to be armchair quarterback Southerners. Stand up for what you believe in. If you really believe in it, stand up for it. Don't walk around and act like you believe in it. Standing up for what's right is not easy. Standing up for what's right is what we should do. It's what is expected of us. As Americans, we've done it all along. And we don't let people push us around. And we stand up for what's right. Those men stood on that battlefield and watched their comrades fall because they stood for what they believed in. And we oftentimes sit back and watch it happen to us. And that's not honoring their memory. In fact, that's shaming their memory. You see, we should hold them as examples, because we, as the descendants of those Confederate veterans, must abide by the charge that was left by Stephen Lee when he told us that it is our duty to see that the true history of the South is preserved for future generations. So I want to know from you, who's willing to stand up? Who's willing to take a brave stand? Who's willing to put past this idea of political correctness and stand for what's right? Who's willing to hold the flag, to hold the banner, to share with the world who your people were and what they did? You know, one of my favorite generals would be Low Armistead. And you know Low Armistead was part of Pickett's outfit. And I love what he did. He hung his hat on his sword and he turned to his men and said, "Who will go with me? Who wants to go with me across that field right there? Who's willing to walk into the face of all those cannon and all those soldiers?" And every one of those men stood up and marched with him. Well, his ancestors are crying out today, who's going with me? Who's standing up for your people? Who's willing to do what they did? You see, as the soldier that we know and love, his glory is in the past, but his strength is in the present. His strength runs through your veins. You say you have Confederate heritage, stand up for that heritage. Stand like he stood at Gettysburg. Stand like he stood on the backside of that hill with Jackson that day at Manassas. Stand like he stood when he stood for what he believed in. You see, wherever you find the Confederate soldier today, wherever you find that Southern exemption of manhood today, whether that individual is laboring in your streets, he's working in your factories, he's tilling your fields, pause and tip your hat to that Southern man standing up for what he knows to be right. He is entitled to the greatest respect this land ever has to give. And it's up to us to make sure they get it. Don't be silenced by a few. Stand up for what you know is right. So who will go with me today? Who's willing to stand up? Who, like the rest, would say, let's cross that field. Let's do what General Lee asked us to do. And General Stephen Lee says it's your duty to share the true history of the South. So I think the greatest soldier, the greatest Civil War soldier, the greatest Southern soldier is the one that you have flowing through your veins, because he stood for what he believed in. And he didn't back down when the time came. He didn't turn and run. And he was willing to die on a field far from home for something he believed in. We should be willing to stand up at home for what we believe in. So I thank you for the opportunity to be here with you today.